Truth, logic, action, power. It's the GreggHoush Show here on New Revolutionary Radio. From the Leonard School in Malden, Massachusetts, Gregg and company are here to bring a sense of ethics to your news. Whether it's politics, activism, or current events, we always seek to inform and never to deceive. Let's start the show.
Good evening and welcome to episode 57 of the GreggHoush Show. Here we are with our co-host Mac, our empty seat where Kayla used to sit, and our special guest Liam.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? Glad to be on the show.
Good. So tonight we've got all kinds of fun stuff to talk about. The Senate Intelligence Committee was nice enough to give us all sorts of stuff. The Senate Judiciary Committee was nice enough to give us 2,500 pages of stuff. Michael Cohen is still an idiot.
And in a world of trouble.
And in a world of trouble. Sitting in a hotel room wondering why me.
Yeah.
Pretty much. We've just got this laundry list. In the Seychelles, it's a wonderful island. I mean, it's a great place to be, when you're having private meetings that you want to have away from the world. Giuliani is still a moron. Still getting things wrong. And still, even though I know he's stupid, I think the positions that he's found himself in show at least enough intelligence to know what he's doing at this point, and he's doing it on purpose.
It's hard. It's very hard to believe that it's unintentional.
It is, but on the other hand, he's working for free, so you get what you pay for.
True.
Well, I mean, everyone working for Trump ultimately is working for free, aren't they? It's not like he's known for paying the people working for him.
Yeah, and there's really no excuse these days for people working for him without the expectation being paid. We have the internet to do this kind of research to know that.
You know.
Yeah, you don't have an excuse not to.
We've got the Republicans killing off community banks. We've got some interesting primaries. We've got North Korea seemingly getting Trump to back down and acquiesce on everything and offer all kinds of security just so he can get the win here. It's going to be an interesting one here.
Yeah.
So
the really impressive thing is it's only been like 4 days since we recorded the last episode. You would have thought that there wouldn't be this much material in that short a period of time. But boy, the last few days, I know I've been saying this like the last two shows, but just every fucking week.
Every week, man.
This week has been even worse than usual.
That's because we're in the hell dimension.
Yes, clearly the worst timeline.
If there are multiple verses, then we definitely went off on a tangent and did not get the good one.
No.
Or any of the good ones. I'm sure there's many good ones. I'm
Yes.
sure there is indeed one where everyone has a pony, like Vermin Supreme wants us to. Not ours. Ours, instead, we have Donald Trump.
A pony is nice, but I'll just settle for Bernie Sanders.
I think that would have been fun. That would have been an interesting experiment. We see how that worked out.
We could have had a humble Jewish carpenter as our president.
That is an interesting way to look at it.
Indeed.
My Catholic friend.
Catholic?
It's the Irish in you that makes me think that.
Yeah.
I like your reaction, though. That was good times.
Not quite.
So, here we are with the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee and some statements. On Wednesday, senior members of the Senate Intelligence Committee discussed their work on the Russia investigation. And here's a quote from Senator Richard Burr, a Republican from North Carolina. And he says, quote, "The first task in our inquiry was to evaluate the intelligence community's work on this important piece of analysis. Committee staff have spent 14 months reviewing the sources, tradecraft, and analytic work, and we see no reason to dispute the conclusions. There is no doubt that Russia undertook an unprecedented effort to interfere with our 2016 elections." So that is a real Republican, like GOP guy, Mr. Burr.
The chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, no less.
Saying that, no, they're right. Russia did this.
100%.
Contradicting the House.
Completely.
Well, yeah. I mean, they don't have Nunes over there, doing whatever it is he's doing. Like, put a word to it. What is Nunes doing? I mean,
stonewalling.
Subterfuge? What word accurately describes what he's doing?
Utter imbecilic uselessness.
I mean, it's on purpose what he's doing.
Yes,
this is
absolutely,
active. You
100%.
can't call it idiocy.
No.
You have to say
I
that.
mean, you can also call it idiocy, but it's not like he's unintentionally doing it.
Sure. No, it is intentionally sabotaging high-level federal investigations.
I believe there's a term for that, obstruction of justice.
There we go. See, ladies and gentlemen, we have a crime.
I mean, I think there are also some single word terms for it, but in this particular instance, obstruction of justice would seem to cover it.
Burr wasn't the only Republican speaking out here.
I like to. My favorite was the statement we got from John Cornyn, who's of course the number 2 Senate Republican, because his statement on the subject was just kind of hilarious because he tried to downplay it, but it's really obvious that he saw that, there was a lot he couldn't really say that he wanted to. So he was like, I think the president tends to conflate collusion and meddling. And fairly, there is overwhelming evidence in meddling and no evidence in collusion. I think the ICA, that's the Intelligence Community Assessment, by and large was well done. I do think they dropped the ball with respect to crediting the Steele dossier. I think it gave rise to a lot of rumors and gave rise to a lot of unverified information, which should not have been a part of it. So John Cornyn was like, yeah, no, the ICA was solid, but let me obfuscate a bit with some stuff that wasn't really actually covered in the ICA, since the ICA report was about the election period specifically and doesn't cover a lot of the stuff that we have that's more recent, which, interestingly enough, is a point that a Republican, Senator James Lankford, also on the Senate Intelligence Committee, made in his statement that was made almost practically at the same time as Cornyn's, because he said that the IC did a good job in a very rapid time period pulling together the details. The ICA wasn't comprehensive about everything. They had a very thin slice of what they were looking at. For what they did in the time period they did it, it was accurate, end quote.
So getting back to Cornyn.
Yeah.
So he doesn't believe that the Steele dossier should have given it as much credit as it was.
Yes, and he thinks that they should have, that there's no evidence of collusion.
But wasn't the Steele dossier the thing that kind of got the ball rolling on everything?
No,
Came in late.
It was
the investigations were running for over a year before that really dropped.
It really got it going in the public sphere, but the law enforcement investigations were mostly already going on.
See, when I see that he wants to discount the Steele dossier.
Oh yeah, especially given that literally nothing in it has actually been disproven, and every single verifiable detail has been verified.
All
so
that
far.
tells me he doesn't believe the piss tape is real. He is a non-believer.
Really, because I disagree. I think he thinks it's real.
He's just not willing to admit it.
Yeah, I don't think. At this point, I don't think very many Senate Republicans are really that. Okay, they're pretty stupid, but they're not that stupid, especially ones on the Intelligence Committee who have seen all of the evidence here.
Well, yeah, no one would admit that it was real, except maybe if Santorum was still in there, perhaps.
No, I don't think he would either.
Santorum.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Don't bring him up.
Different kind of deviance, I think.
Yeah. The internet still knows of his deviancy.
Mm-hmm.
But Google Santorum. I'm sure it still shows up.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes. Yes.
So that was the Senate Intelligence Committee statements.
I want to get one more in here because they asked Tom Cotton, one of Trump's most frequent defenders and close allies in the Senate, about his view of the Senate Intelligence Committee's work on this.
What did Tom have to say?
Well, weirdly enough, he declined to comment.
Because he literally couldn't comment on the thing that he knew was true.
Had nothing.
He couldn't right now.
So after all of this fun, we end up on Wednesday with the Senate Judiciary Committee dropping 2,500 pages of testimony related to Russian influence in the 2016 presidential election.
All kinds of stuff in it. I mean,
Lots
as you'd
of new
expect
stuff
from
that we didn't know.
2,500 pages.
Did you read through it?
No, not all of it. I've tried to largely stick to some summaries and only looked at a few of the more interesting bits myself. It'll take a while to get around to trying to go through more than a handful of that. But fortunately, other people have already gone through a lot of it, and we've seen some real fun stuff, especially the 224 pages of interview with Donald Trump Jr. Man, that was just
about the Trump Tower meeting with the Russians.
Yes.
The committee, Democrats issued a statement saying, in part, the committee has found evidence of multiple contacts between the Trump campaign and Russian government officials or their intermediaries, including offers of assistance and purported overtures from Vladimir Putin. So they're saying, literally, we have found actual evidence of all of this.
Yeah.
All the collusion.
Well, they didn't specify that they found evidence of the actual collusion, but
they always downplay things so much
Also,
that, what's the real truth is way above what they said.
We've had for months now, many months, hard evidence released by Donald Trump Jr. himself of his intent to collude.
Oh, absolutely.
An attempt to collude. So,
yay, Twitter.
The best case scenario for them is that the Russians wanted to collude with them, and they tried to collude with the Russians, but somehow were too incompetent to pull it off.
I'm surprised Donald Trump Jr. has enough words to fill 224 pages.
Well, a lot of them were things like, I don't know and I don't recall. Which he repeated a total of about
105 times he said he could not recall, 37 times he did not remember, and 44 times that he didn't know.
Yeah, so that's a total of at least 186 times where his response to a question was proclaiming that he, in fact, did not have that information.
Oh, come on, guys. I think you could ring him a bit more.
I mean, to give credit where credit is due, if I were, called in to testify about something like, it
happened 2 years ago.
Yeah, and was like, maybe not something that I would recall every single detail of, because, like, what do you really? I'm sure there would be plenty of questions where I'd be like, I don't know, I don't recall that. The thing that's interesting here isn't just the sheer number of times, it's the sorts of things that he said it in response to. For example, there was a question where of course, there's the, infamous line about, I love it, especially later in the summer. And a senator asked him, he was asked, what was the if you loved in that email? And he replied, potential information about an opponent, which, just to stop for a second, man, just handed it to us.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Foreign government.
Bam, we got it.
What's that quote I've heard before? I've been working on this story for years.
Right, and he just fucking tweeted it out. It actually somehow manages to get better because of this whole I don't know, I don't recall thing. So the follow-up question there is, and what about the thing that says it is part of Russia and its government's support for Mr. Trump? Did you also love that? And his reply was, I don't know, I don't recall. Really?
And then he's asked, did you understand that would be problematic? And he responds, I didn't think that listening to someone with information relevant to the fitness and character of a presidential candidate would be an issue. No. And you can hear the lawyer right there.
Oh, yeah. His
Whoever
lawyer,
coached him on that answer,
they had
that's
him ready
like
for
one of the
that
few
one.
answers he remembered.
That whoever it was that was coaching him on that
Sharp
has
and
to
take
be
a breath.
It was like, oh, thank God he answered one of them right.
You know that he has to be so pissed because, like, how did you get that one? Like, how did you fuck up the previous two and then manage that?
Right.
God damn it. What did I tell you?
What are these mental gymnastics you're pulling here?
Not even like mental gymnastics, just like, how are you this much of an idiot?
So it's 244 pages of Trump Jr. just being, as dumb as we all know him to be.
Yeah, and there was so many great. I think one of my favorites, just because of the not just how dumb it was, but like what it revealed, is that there was a conversation about some calls that Trump Jr. had on June 6th, 2016, 3 days before the Trump Tower meeting. He had a call with Emin Agalarov, and then about 20 minutes later, he had a roughly 4-minute long call with a blocked number. And then immediately after that, another 3-minute outgoing call with Emin Agalarov right after that. And then right after that, he emailed Rob Goldstone saying, Rob, thanks for the help.
And remember that Goldstone is Aglarov's representative.
And the guy that set up the Trump Tower meeting.
Yes.
So the question in regards to this conversation was asked. He was asked who the call was with the blocked number, and he replies, "I have no idea." Because it's not like it would be related to that conversation with Emin or something.
Who was it that tried to play off the whole Trump Tower meeting as like talking about adoption or something?
Basically,
about
all
everybody?
of them at this point. It depends on which time period you're talking about as to like what their story
I actually
was.
do believe they brought it up.
Oh, absolutely.
But I mean, that's
Mostly
just because they're still really pissed off about that one.
Mostly because, the adoption thing is specifically regarding U.S. sanctions against Russia.
But at this point, has that story just completely collapsed?
No. They
know-
definitely brought it up, but that's
Oh,
part
yeah,
of the
that was-
problem.
yeah, that was central.
The Magnitsky Act is sanctions that we have put on Russia that they want removed.
And the adoption
So
thing
that
is...
conversation should not have been able to happen
Yeah,
there.
the entire adoption thing is about sanctions. Russia, or not even exactly sanctions, but like legal restrictions against the U.S., which are kind of equivalent to sanctions, but they're not economic sanctions. They're about adoption and stuff that Russia placed on the U.S. in response to the Magnitsky Act sanctions. That's what the whole adoption thing is.
Yeah.
They want the Magnitsky Act to go away, and then they're willing to drop the ban on U.S.
So it sounds like
adoptions.
what you're telling me, though, is that in admitting that it was a
Yes,
conversation
no,
was
they
about adoption,
admitted part of the problem.
they admitted a crime.
Yeah,
Multiple times they have. At least the very idea of a crime and the fact that, Mueller needs to go find a little more info there.
Right.
Which he already has at this point.
Yeah. Another great thing is that, in following up on this question about who the call was with, they asked, does your father use a blocked number on his cell phone or any phones you call him on? Once again, we got an I don't know. Which,
How do you not know that?
especially given that we know from Corey Lewandowski's testimony that Trump's primary residence uses a blocked number, which you'd think someone who might answer a cell phone call from that number might have at some point noticed that it's a blocked number, since that's what it would say on your phone.
Which now also tells me that if you call any of Trump's closest people from a blocked number, they're going to answer because they're going to think it's Trump at home.
Or at least know that that's a possibility.
So it's a good way to get them to answer the phone.
Yeah. So he tries to claim he doesn't know if his father might have a blocked number.
Can
And
they
then-
subpoena some kind of phone
Oh,
company
absolutely.
to-
And I'm sure they have those records.
yeah, Mueller,
Or at least Mueller does.
Mueller's always
Senate
10
intelligence
steps
might.
ahead.
Yeah, no, we're almost everything we're learning at this point is stuff that Mueller knew half a year ago. It's just this is only now coming out public. But then it got even better because they asked about the, does he have a blocked number that he might have been calling on? And he was like, I don't know. And they were like, so you don't know whether this might have been your father? And his reply was, I don't. That's right. He had a call with Emin Aglarov. Shortly thereafter, made an outgoing call or made a call with a blocked number. Right after that, called Emin again immediately to have a brief conversation. He has no idea who that conversation was with, but he absolutely can't tell you whether it was with his father because he has no idea.
That's
How plausible does that sound to
that's
anyone?
a surprising version of a human memory.
Like, if that's not the worst, dumbest excuse I've ever fucking heard in my life, it's not for lack of trying.
Well, Don Jr. is pretty transparent.
Yeah, he is really bad at pretty much everything.
Lying.
I'm just going to go with pretty much everything.
Keeping a wife.
Yeah, pretty much everything.
Yeah, I'm sticking with my answer.
Don Jr. was a lot of the testimony in there, but there's that's 244 out of 2,500 pages.
10%.
So there's Rob Goldstone's testimony is throughout this wonderful set of documents, and it's all kinds of fun too.
Oh, it really is.
In this set of documents, he says that Emin Aglarov is the one who insisted that he helped set up the meeting between Trump's son and the lawyer during the campaign to pass along material on Clinton, overriding Goldstone's own warnings that the meeting would be a bad idea. He said, "It doesn't matter, you just have to get the meeting." So Goldstone actually told Aglarov that this is going to be a bad idea, then Aglarov said, "Do it anyways."
Oh yeah, and Goldstone was very insistent on this point that he had said that it would be a bad idea from the start. Like he was all over in his testimony, like, no, I said from the beginning, I warned them, I totally did, I told them it was a bad idea, and they didn't listen.
And as a British citizen, he doesn't care about either of these two people.
Right after it all happened, I told them that I was so mad because this had been a waste of time, and they'd ruined like the 20-year reputation I'd worked to build and all this. He had all kinds of excuses about how upset he was, which raises the question of why he did this obviously dumb thing if he knew it was such a bad idea and was telling them this the whole time. But we actually, I would say that Goldstone wasn't the most interesting of the things that we got, because we got a bunch of stuff about Ike Cavalazzi.
Who is that?
We have talked about him a fair bit. He's kind of a minor player. He was one of the attendees of the Trump Tower meeting. He's a longtime employee of Aris Agalarov. Just generally well connected to, well, the Agalarovs and therefore Russia.
Putin and the Duma and everyone.
Yeah, he's worked for Agalarov for quite a while now. But one of the things we got that was really interesting was just that on July 11th, 2017, that is right after, of course, Donald Trump Jr. tweeted out his admission of everything by posting those emails. We know, thanks to this trove of documents, that Cavalazzi had received an email. The sender was redacted, so we don't know who sent it to him, but it had the subject line DTJR, that's with a space between the two, and the message was, why did he release this email admitting to collusion? That's right. Someone emailed Cavalazzi asking him, what the fuck is this moron doing? We also heard from him a number of other interesting things. Because if that wasn't enough, right? But, I mean, we heard things like that.
Cavalazzi actually testified as well, so we've got testimony from him.
Specifically, he testified that about a little over a month before the 2013 Miss Universe pageant in Moscow, he witnessed Aris Agalarov on the phone with a Putin aide trying to set up a meeting with Trump. The actual test line here is kind of broken up because it doesn't seem to be the best at English.
Yep.
Perhaps understandably, given he's Russian and not an American.
So how long till he gets a polonium injection?
It doesn't seem like he's done anything that would really piss off.
Goldstone's the British citizen, so he's the one on the wrong plot of land where that keeps happening, it seems.
I mean, honestly, I don't think Cavalazzi would have shown up to testify if Putin had an objection. Putin is 100% okay with Trump going down, incidentally.
He doesn't care if everyone knows that this happened.
Yeah, no. He only cared insofar as creating more confusion advanced his other goals for a while.
Yeah, his goals in this are still the division of America. I mean, the greater
US
divide
power
that we are getting between Republicans, Democrats, everything else is, if you follow, especially all the ads that were released, all the ads that were placed, if you look at them all, the Senate Democrats released, that giant, trove of ads. All of the ads that, the Russians were really placing, if you follow the narrative, is trying to build a greater divide between right and left in America and make it a fight that, we fight so hard internally that the rest of the world wins by, taking away power from us.
Right. Now Facebook is making it so that you have to give your address, you have to present a government ID for your advertisement when you're doing these kinds of advertisements on specifically hot button issues, abortion, gun control. So,
you go to the dark web and buy them for $50.
Yep.
Or you think the Russians don't know how to use the dark web? I think they kind of might know how to use the dark web.
Maybe a little.
Or they can go the Americans on us.
Or they might just have really good tradecraft and be able to, create them themselves because they've got, hundreds of years of spying under their belt.
Honestly, if you have the resources of an actual government behind you, it's not that hard to get a legitimate fake ID at all.
Even a basket case like
or not
North
even
Korea
a fake. Just get
shit.
one made that's 100% legit.
Yeah.
Also,
it doesn't stop much.
No. That being said, Cavalazzi had one other just amazing thing in his testimony that I want to include here. Because he corrected his testimony. Previously, he'd said that he'd gone from the Trump Tower meeting to California for some other stuff. Well, turns out he kind of forgot that he'd actually gone straight from the Trump Tower meeting to Moscow to go work on some issues related to Agalov's company's debt to Sberbank for a month. So he spent the next month in Russia, not California, where he said that he'd flown from the Trump Tower meeting. Because, I mean, that's subtle. It's subtle.
That's
the word.
Whatever.
I forget about random months,
right? Especially when the difference is the trip between the trip to California versus a trip to Moscow. Basically the same, right?
Basically the same place. I mean,
How's the-
having been
how's the
there, you
pierogi?
know, I gotta say, there's a little more sun in one of them.
Maybe a few palm trees, some eucalyptus.
Wow. Okay. So, you know, there's this, we can actually go on for like another hour and a half on just the stuff in those documents.
Seriously, I mean, just to summarize, we have the Mooch making a reappearance because, of course, he did, and it involved him emailing Rob Goldstone for no apparent fucking reason.
Just asking, you know,
My door's always open.
Yeah, you want to talk?
Then we had
I
all
love
of
it
the
when
Trump.
special guests come back.
Right? This is the worst season, though. They obviously just stopped caring. They're bringing back the Mooch. He had like, what, 2 episodes appearing? Anyway, we also had the fact that apparently the entire Trump organization, including its lawyers, were working with everyone involved in the Trump Tower meeting to coordinate their stories behind the scenes from the start. Which, felony witness tampering Does that sound like a thing to anyone? Because I'm pretty sure that's a thing that applies specifically to when you try to get witnesses to potential criminal activity that could be investigated to arrange their stories to be in agreement with each other.
So in that case, you just find the weakest link and wedge into that.
Man, I don't know how they're going to find the weakest link here because they're all pretty fucking
Where's the
weak.
strong link?
Well, they got,
Can you?
well, the weakest of the weak was Manafort.
Was it? Because there's Donald
No, I
Trump
think
Jr. and
I
Jared
think the
Kushner.
weakest of the week was Flynn, personally. I mean, the
Oh,
first shoe to
yeah,
drop, you know,
that's
like
a
that
good
guy.
Yeah. First major resignation.
Look, I'm just going to throw this out there. We've gone through literally half the known participants in that meeting as likely candidates for weakest link there.
So let's move on to Michael Cohen. Let's have some fun with this guy because he hasn't had enough yet.
Yeah, he's going too soon.
Yeah.
He's in the process.
He says that it's close. So as we all know, you know, every day is presumably the worst day in Michael Cohen's life from now on.
Yes.
It's
Since
not going to
yesterday.
get better.
Not likely.
Yeah, it's not getting better. This is
It's breathtaking.
This is not
and
Groundhog's Day where, you know, slowly he figures shit out the next morning.
Yes,
no,
yes.
it's just bad. So,
It's
you know,
breathtaking in its
a
horror.
law enforcement official leaked a real damning document that had transcripts of bank transactions and all the financial transactions that we now know about, like, say, AT&T and all these other companies giving to Michael Cohen. And this long-time law enforcement official had never leaked before. It was just, you know, he felt it was his duty because there were supposedly 3 sets of documents in this government database, FinCEN, which is, you know, a financial kind of accountability database that the Treasury Department carries. And 2 of them went missing. And right now, the whole Treasury Department is definitely under Trump's, you know, control with Mnuchin in power. And so when this law enforcement official saw that, you know, what he says, it looked like the records were being scrubbed and the evidence was being destroyed, he took the last document, the only one he could get a hold of, and got it out to the public before it disappeared too. And that is just, I understand things like, say, what Snowden did as just, you know, an overarching systemic problem, and he tried to deal with it from the inside, and when that wasn't going to work, he did what he did. But this is a whole different level. This is a guy watching people in power destroying evidence of wrongdoing.
Like Nixon.
Well, I mean, it's
Well,
not,
yeah.
we don't know for certain that that's what happened.
But it
we
sure
don't
looks
know
like
what-
it.
Yeah, the other...
And that's why he released.
Yeah, the other real possibility that seems plausible here is that the special counsel wanted those documents hidden.
So they could also just be, you know, only for Mueller's eyes now. You
Yeah,
know?
it could be the other way there, but he certainly saw something that looked like, oh, there's a real possibility here of very bad shit. So don't take the chance.
And so these are suspicious activity reports, and these go into the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN. And They go in there when any major suspicious transactions happen. Banks will report on them. Some of it's automated reporting because they just will report certain levels of things across certain borders, especially with certain companies in certain countries. But these were very specific accounts where there were notes on these reports. These were done by humans saying, this looks wrong.
Yeah, we actually have the explanation for the Columbus Nova transfer, which, of course, is the one that's the investment firm linked to a Russian oligarch because his cousin runs it and everything. But their actual reason for flagging the activity suspicious was, quote, because the CEO's company transferred substantial funds to the personal attorney of Trump at the same time the CEO reportedly donated substantial funds to Trump's inauguration fund and joint fundraising committee for Trump's reelection and the Republican National Committee, end quote. So they were literally just like, this looks really suspicious because this guy is giving the president money and also the president's personal lawyer money. Huh.
Question. The circumstances in which this document came to light, though, would that affect its admissibility as evidence?
Well, no, because it doesn't matter how it became public. The way that it would get entered into the court would be through criminal prosecution, which means law enforcement, which means they're getting all those records the official way, going through the proper channels. It doesn't matter how it came to light. As long as the report itself wasn't like fraudulently entered or something, then it's 100% admissible.
Absolutely.
All right, then. Then, yeah. This is just going to be another screw in his back.
Oh, and speaking of screws in his back, with interesting stories, another reason that Michael Cohen is certainly not having a good time right now.
Can we just make this a page-a-day calendar? Is
Michael Cohen thanks to Qatari investors?
Yeah, specifically one, Ahmed al-Rumahi, who is also a former diplomat for Qatar, who has had kind of an interesting presence in the media recently. He's been in the news a bit because of a lawsuit against him where a former business partner, Jeff Quatinetz, alleges that al-Rumahi tried to bribe him for access to Steve Bannon and suggestively boasted that Michael Flynn hadn't refused our money. So that's kind of a weird place for this to start because that's almost the exact opposite direction of where like all the rest of what we've heard here goes. Because, I mean, al-Rumahi, well, first of all, Quatinetz actually testified on the record under oath about, a bunch of this. So on the one hand, that doesn't look great for al-Rumahi, but he says that, no such conversation ever took place. That Quatinetz routinely raised the possibility of asking Bannon to assist Qatar and that he didn't take it seriously because Bannon had publicly criticized Qatar repeatedly. And that by the time this conversation would have occurred, which was this past January, Bannon had been out of the White House for like a long time. So it wouldn't have made any sense to bring up Bannon. And then the Kai Henry, who was a chief creative officer of Quatinetz at the time, said he didn't believe that version of the conversation because, well, they'd already been arguing about cash. So it didn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah, they were already in a bad shape. Their relationship was no longer good enough for conversations like that to be happening.
Now, it's interesting because, al-Rumahi came up in that context originally, but then his appearances in this story since then have been kind of weird the other way around. He came up because of Michael Avenatti doing a tweet. I believe we mentioned it last episode, but some of the follow-ups to the odd pictures of video footage from the lobby of Trump Tower in December of 2016 that he posted, he then proceeded to go on and talk about in the tweets, saying things like, quote, why was Ahmed al-Rumahi meeting with Michael Cohen and Michael Flynn in December 2016? And why did Mr. al-Rumahi later brag about bribing administration officials according to a sworn declaration filed in court? Of course, that's a reference to the statement by Quatinetz. But the question about the meeting, then initially, well, that's what got people interested because al-Rumahi had been identified as one of the people in the photographs, along with Michael Cohen and Michael Flynn entering the elevator.
Sure this wasn't public before? These photographs?
It's actually, it wasn't publicly known, but we now know because Michael Avenatti later tweeted out what the source of the video was. And it was actually footage taken from C-SPAN. C-SPAN had actually been broadcasting.
It's brilliant. Nobody watches
the
that.
lobby of the Trump Tower, and they had footage of Michael Cohen, Michael Flynn, and al-Rumahi entering an elevator, just randomly in the background, and then like an hour later coming out from the elevator.
You know, I'm just gonna say
So that
it's
was
beautiful.
just beautiful.
I'm just gonna tell you that just makes me love Michael Avenatti even more. Seriously.
Right?
He may be a scumbag lawyer, but he's a kind of competent scumbag lawyer that I can admire.
So, and after this first came out, al-Rumahi's company, Sports Trinity, initially, or I guess, I think it was actually like a lawyer on behalf of them, not actually an official spokesperson or something. But anyway, they were like, oh, we do not confirm and have no basis to confirm the video. And like tried to pretend like, oh, we have no idea if that was him. And then like the next day,
you doubt the credibility of C-SPAN?
They doubt the credibility of that footage of that thing happening. But they then the next day had a spokesman tell CNN that, oh yeah, Mr. al-Rumahi was at Trump Tower on December 12th, 2016. He was there in his then role as head of Qatar Investments, an internal division of QIA, to accompany the Qatar delegation that was meeting with Trump transition officials on that date. He didn't participate in any meetings with Michael Flynn, and his involvement in the meetings on that date was limited. So, they were like, oh, we got no idea. Don't know. Well, okay, yeah, no, he was totally there, but none of that. But the interesting part is that he's actually, it turns out, for weeks now, been giving interviews off the record to The Intercept, and they finally published an article about what he's had to say.
Trying to clear his name and everything.
And he said that specifically he was originally hesitant to speak out publicly because he was afraid of causing diplomatic issues, being a former diplomat for Qatar, and Qatar having a number of issues at the moment, like that whole kind of being invaded by Saudi Arabia, blockade.
Maybe Saudi Arabia might be causing them some trouble lying, saying that they're the ones funding terrorism when it's Saudi Arabia doing most of that.
And, maybe the Trump administration hasn't exactly been all that helpful with Qatar in the first place in addressing that. So
I guess that meeting must not have gone that well.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
so he was saying that, he didn't want to speak out publicly originally because of that, but he changed his mind for a number of complex reasons, and including the lawsuit against him.
Right.
But he also talked about this and said that, oh, by the way, I talked with Michael Cohen in December 2016. Funny thing, Cohen asked for an upfront fee of $1 million for his services in the midst of their conversation about potential Qatari investment in U.S. infrastructure. And in fact, Cohen suggested that maybe Qatar could revitalize some Midwestern towns and, may grease some wheels in the process. Allegedly, what he said was, for example, we can find a steel factory that's about to shut down. You guys can invest. I'll give you some names to appoint as partners. You guys put in money. We will put in the know-how and share the profits 50-50. We can perhaps get a federal government offtake agreement for 10 to 15 years. It'll revitalize the city. Great PR. You guys will look like you're saving the city. Everybody wins, which of course is we're going to use U.S. funds to make a profit off of, these investments, and we'll just split it down the middle because we're providing the access and you're putting up the money for it.
That's not exactly, no, that's not insider trading. That's just, I would say, illegal.
Yeah, that is the definition of quid pro quo. This for that.
Yeah.
Is this what the SEC was made for?
This is what this isn't even SEC work.
This is what the FBI was made for.
This isn't even Federal Elections Committee. This isn't Security and Exchange Commissions. No, this is pretty much like Secret Service or FBI.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So, beyond our wonderful new friend, Al Rumahi, who is talking to The Intercept and just having a blast out there with his new celebrity status.
And I mean, I'm sure that everyone involved here is telling versions of events that are very favorable and not necessarily 100% truthful because it makes them
look good. The truth is
good.
somewhere hidden in a mixture of all these stories.
So I don't doubt that Al Rumahi, quite possibly is lying about some of his own innocence.
Sure.
But some of the other stuff sounds very plausible and consistent with everything else we know.
And of course, the thing that really, one brought Avenatti into our consciousness, really brought him out, but also, really kicked a
Say
lot.
what you mean, Greg. He brought it into our hearts.
Yes, into our hearts. I love that man. Good old Michael Cohen compensating Stormy Daniels. Donald Trump has now updated his financial disclosure form, acknowledging compensating Michael Cohen for the Stormy Daniels payment.
Which might just put both of them in a world of shit.
Yeah, that's that's literally just worse. The Office of Government Ethics has basically said that the former head of it, Walter Schwab, has said that the OGE has effectively reported the president to the DOJ for potentially committing a crime over this.
Yeah, and that's because the actual acting director of OGE, the Office of Government Ethics, wrote a letter to the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, to the effect that the payment made by Mr. Cohen is required to be reported as a liability. So he literally just said, hey, so the president filed this disclosure form, and by filing this, admitting this set of facts, he's acknowledging that he didn't correctly report his disclosures and therefore violated federal law.
All right. What's all these complaints, things I hear about? Maybe it was last week about, they're threatening Rod Rosenstein with impeachment or something.
Oh, yeah. There are a couple of the Republicans in Congress have done that, but it doesn't seem like it's going to go anywhere.
Yeah, they've realized what kind of career suicide it would be, taking out an investigator, attempting to do all of this fun stuff. They're learning. Basically,
they only
where
had
their limits are.
20 Republicans in Congress on board for that.
Yeah,
total in all of Congress, there were 20 of them, and I think they were mostly House.
Yeah.
So they did not have anywhere close to the numbers that they needed, even to bring it to a vote. Never mind when.
Oh no.
So Vanity Fair published an article on Wednesday reporting that people who know Michael Cohen say that he is upset and feeling browbeaten with the perception that he is being attacked.
And his family's being made to suffer.
All because investigators are trying to get to the president. But that, quote, I'm not going to just roll over.
Till next week.
Well, I mean, later in the article, we had him confiding in friends, quote, I just can't take this anymore, end quote.
As he hung out in a hotel
Michael
room.
Cohen, suicide watch.
Oh, I'm not so sure that suicide is necessarily the likeliest outcome
logic.
there.
I said somebody call logic.
Oh, yeah?
Good times here. So Cohen's days continue to get worse, and I continue to laugh about it because fuck him.
Schadenfreude is best.
Indeed.
I mean, really, if you have any doubts about what kind of person he is, it's not hard to Google Michael Cohen and just find a laundry list of how much of a shitbag he is.
Yeah, long before this. Like, set your filter to just start last year and go back.
Hell, just search for the threats he's made against people about suing them on Trump's behalf.
Yeah.
Just that alone will convince you he's a horrible human being.
All those people that never got paid.
Yeah, so, among others.
Contractors and the like.
In more, Russian collusion news, in NJ Advanced Media, owners of NJ.com, this isn't the New York Times, this isn't the Washington Post, this isn't who you expect to break stories.
Or at least not ones not specifically regarding New Jersey.
So they released a story revealing additional details related to Eric Prince's meeting with Russians, including Kirill Dmitriev and United Arab Emirates Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, MBZ, in the Seychelles in January 2017.
Yeah, it's amazing.
NJ.com, well done, guys.
And what they actually got is pretty impressive.
Scoop right there.
They went and got the actual airport records from the Seychelles, and found that turns out a Russian plane carrying 6 passengers and crew departed from Moscow and landed in the Seychelles airport on January 10th, the day before Erik Prince arrived, according to the Seychelles Civil Aviation Authority. Then they did some research into the ownership and talked to some people that weren't authorized to say anything in public about who the owners were, but privately told them that, it's Andrei Skok, the Russian mining billionaire and deputy in the Duma. Then they talked with
Russian government.
That's the Russian Congress, effectively.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then they talked with employees at the airport and the Four Seasons Hotel, which is where the meetings with Erik Prince took place, and found out that according to both employees at the airport and the hotel, the passengers of the plane stayed at the Four Seasons. The one thing we don't know yet is whether Andrei Skok was in fact one of the people on the plane, but I'm not really sure how much that even matters at this point.
Yeah, it's more, watching Mueller's investigation and the things that we learn that do somehow find their way out of the investigation itself and how far ahead he always is. Like, I look at these scoops that are public scoops and I think, man, he must have known that like 6 months ago. He must have just already that must be old news to him. Like, we are so far behind him in what we're reading.
At least a year.
Yeah, like he's got to be so far ahead of us on this stuff.
So what point does the news breaks that come out, catch up with the modern times?
When he releases his report.
Yeah, that's about when.
Yeah.
Yeah, but new crimes keep coming up all the time, and Mueller has to sigh and just freaking open up.
Yeah, when scoops like this happen, he probably looks and says, "Oh yeah, I remember reading that last year."
Oh yeah, I remember when I first came across that one.
Yeah.
One more fun detail about Skok. He's one of the 28 Russians that were added to the list of sanctioned individuals. Along with Oleg Deripaska.
Yeah,
earlier this year.
People that Trump's people were talking to.
Weird.
Yeah, strange, very strange. And of course, Giuliani continues his tour. This tour is him going around the country talking to various people about what a piece of shit Trump is. Now, that's not what he's supposed to be doing.
Nominally, at least.
But it's what he's doing, and we love it. We don't love him for it. There's no love for this man. No. But we love what he's doing. Because it's hilarious.
The only real question here is he really dumb enough to be doing this unwittingly? Or is this just his revenge from Donald Trump? Like, he ran against Donald Trump in primaries. He didn't get a cabinet seat from Donald Trump despite being aligned with him by the time he got elected. Like, man, he might just be holding a grudge here. And that would explain so much.
You think I'm drinking too much? I'll show you drinking too much.
I mean... So, there were 2 main stories from Giuliani this week, and I don't know which of the 2 is my favorite. They both came out the same day, even.
Yeah.
I think maybe my favorite. This is really tough. They're both so good. Well, let's just go in order, because first he went on CNN. Oh, I actually don't remember which one actually chronologically happened first, but regardless, he went on CNN to talk to them about the Mueller investigation and insisted that, all they get to do is write a report. They can't indict. At least they acknowledge that to us after some battling. They acknowledge that to us. So, his entire defense is, Mueller legally doesn't have the power to indict the president. Is that really the argument the president's lawyer wants to be making here?
Not that he didn't do anything.
Right. He just can't indict
But then even if he did, you can't indict him anyways.
Yeah, no.
Oh, when I saw that statement by him, I laughed and laughed and laughed because at this point, Giuliani just has what credibility is.
So then he went on NBC and, of course, walked it back a little, tried anyways to walk it back in his way.
Yeah, and he was like, I wasn't actually told that by Mueller, but, we raised the question with him and he wanted to think about it. And about a day or 2 later, Jim Quarles called Jay Sekulow back and told Jay that they were bound by the Justice Department policy.
Which is nothing. It basically just said
allegedly someone
going by the law.
Under Mueller talked to someone with zero credibility who relayed this to someone else who was with zero credibility who's telling us this. But I mean, the thing that he said is basically 100% uncontroversial. The official standing to DOJ policy is that the president cannot be indicted. The only legal remedy against the president is impeachment.
Yep.
Now, it's interesting because the reason that's the DOJ policy is because that was a policy written by the Nixon White House.
Yes.
And passed.
No, it's a DOJ policy. There's no passing.
So that means they can just discount it entirely.
Anytime, yes. But
Excellent.
I mean, there are some possible legal questions about whether it is actually constitutionally possible for the president to be indicted. But the fact of the matter is the answer that they gave was literally just DOJ policy that we are required to follow currently says, no, we can't do that. And they're playing this up like a victory and then using that as their defense instead of we didn't do anything.
Rosenstein can change this at any point. Right?
Oh, in fact, he doesn't even have to change it. There's actually the way the DOJ regulations are is someone can actually go to the acting attorney general and request specific permission to file charges because they have all the evidence, even though it's in contradiction to standing DOJ policy. And as long as they have approval from the acting attorney general, they can proceed. The acting attorney general in this case is, in fact, Rod Rosenstein, since Jeff Sessions is recused.
Sweet.
So, yeah, I mean, frankly, though, I don't see them. Why would they bother trying to take the route that requires them to override standing DOJ policy and get in a big constitutional fight, which will unquestionably go to SCOTUS? When, I mean, the first thing, like if he releases the report when he's done, there is going to be a lot of pressure to do something if he has, something that he could be taking the president to criminal charges over. All he has to, like, from his perspective, it's not necessarily beneficial to try and have that fight if he can accomplish it by getting the president impeached and then charged.
It's crazy. Their argument is doesn't matter if he did it, he can't be indicted. No, that's not what your lawyer should be saying. In the end, that's not what your lawyer should be saying.
Oh, no.
Speaking of things your lawyer shouldn't be saying, we have the other thing Giuliani said
Especially
the
not a
same
former
day,
prosecutor.
this time on Fox News. Quote, "When I ran, they were looking for dirt on me every day. That's what you do. Maybe you shouldn't, but you do it. There is nothing illegal about that. Even if it comes from a Russian or a German or American, it doesn't matter. They never used the collusion charge, essentially. They rejected it. If there was collusion with the Russians, they would have used it." End quote. There is so much wrong with this statement, starting with the part where it absolutely 100% is illegal to receive opposition research uncompensated from a Russian or a German.
Yeah.
That is straight up
Foreign assistance.
an in-kind contribution that is established under U.S. law, not even remotely controversial.
How cynical is this stuff, though, saying that all campaigns do this on, all campaigns do these freaking investigations, look into dirt on you, and what does that say about democracy?
Yeah, no, and it's such a cynical statement because he knows there's no fucking way Rudy Giuliani doesn't understand the difference in, an in-kind contribution from a foreign national as opposed to hiring someone to do work for you.
He was a prosecutor. Wasn't
Exactly.
Indeed.
And
He
not
knows.
only a prosecutor, but then a politician in his own right. He was both in that order. Like, there's no fucking way in hell he doesn't know that.
So beyond bringing in the best lawyer Trump has ever hired, Mr. Giuliani,
he? Who had
Trump's
to resign from that, what was that group?
Law
he was-
firm,
that
yeah.
law firm
Yeah.
he was in?
Well, Trump's next move is eliminating the National Cybersecurity Coordinator. Now, we all know you don't need cybersecurity on a national level because we've learned clearly over the last few years that the Russians, the Chinese, they don't know how to use computers. So we don't really have to worry about this.
Look,
There's no threat from overseas with computers. Like, we're the only ones who know how to use computers. So
Look, I was
That knows
assured.
Nigerians.
I was assured today in a National Security Council statement that today's actions continue an effort to empower the National Security Council senior directors, and the streamlining management will improve efficiency, reduce bureaucracy, and increase accountability. Because I think we all can rely on the idea that the national members of the National Security Council that didn't arrive there from cybersecurity are experts on computer security and cybersecurity.
Who do you think led the charge to make this happen? I'm thinking,
I mean,
Bolton.
Yeah, Bolton did actually lead the charge to get rid of the National Cybersecurity Coordinator. It was his idea, and he pushed for it.
Yeah.
So here we are living in the age of the, overuse of the word cyber because, well, everything's on computers these days. And we did have that little respite there. Like cyber was the thing in the late 90s. Everything was cyber this, cyber that. And then there's like a good 12 to 15 years, depending on how you kind of look at it, where that word just kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
It's come back. It's now the word. And it's the word for a few reasons. One of them being that every other country on the planet that has enough electricity to run a computer is currently hacking everything in America they can. And that there is no security. You know, the new kind of mantra of anyone who actually knows what they're doing in computer security, especially at the large levels of big enterprises, is you can stop 99% of the hacks that happen on your network if you're really good, really well funded, and really well staffed. 99% cannot get in from the outside through the firewall. But that 1%, that targeted percent, that's usually a state level actor or just one of those hackers who lives somewhere that doesn't fear the government. You know, Romania doesn't have much in the way of resources to go after hackers, so a lot of them get away with it a lot more than they do, say, in other countries. And so, you know, it's going to be one of those rare people who are really targeting you specifically and are well-funded and good at what they do and not fearing prosecution. And that guy, he's getting in, and you're not stopping him. And we all know this. Everyone in cybersecurity knows this. So the thing that you fight now is lateral movement. You fight the ability for them to jump around your network once they get in. That first computer they get on, they shouldn't be able to leave that and go around your network and find things. And there's some amazing tools out there now. It's just, you know, at the level that you need this, they're pretty damn expensive. Darktrace is my favorite. It's $175,000. But if you're a big enterprise, you need it. And, you know, in the day where we have accepted now that state level actors are getting in and you aren't stopping them, and you better find ways to provide better internal security to deal with that fact, that's when he decides to get rid of the White House level job for cybersecurity czar.
You know, the thing that boggles my mind even more than that is the inconsistency from the administration itself. They literally just, what was it, last week? Maybe 2 weeks ago now? Like within the last few weeks, added a cybersecurity position to the Joint Chiefs of Staff for the Department of Defense. But now they're getting rid of the White House level person in charge of cybersecurity.
Trump
so, like,
can't be bothered
it's
with
important enough to elevate them to the highest levels of the Defense Department, but we don't need them actually, you know, having any input on how the country's run.
Wow. So a bunch, of course, senators, members of the House, just everyone spoke out. And right after this happened, Ted Lieu of California and Jim Langevin of Rhode Island put out submitted a a new bill, and the bill was basically to undo exactly what just happened. And it was like as fast as possible. And Lieu said in a statement, quote, "The decision to eliminate the top White House cyber policy role is outrageous, especially given that we're facing more hostile threats from foreign adversaries than ever before." And so we'll see where that goes. I mean, I don't see with a Republican-led Congress that it goes much of anywhere.
They love security.
Yeah, they just don't want to make it look like a Republican in power made a mistake.
Or pay for it.
Or pay for it. So just literally everyone that could possibly have a smart, educated opinion on this is talking and saying, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we are just sitting here in a world where we have lost the White House position that coordinated our cybersecurity policy for the nation across all of the various organizations and government facilities. And that is mind-blowing to me. I mean,
we're losing our coordination.
And the idea that this is somehow going to streamline things?
Yeah, and they did a lot of reports and a lot of research on exactly what was needed at that level for our cybersecurity policy. And every single report that they have that has anything to do with this position or its position of power states very clearly that not only do you need to keep that position, but it's actually not powerful enough. You need to give it some more power. It needs to go up, not down.
Right.
Would you become the cybersecurity czar, Gregg?
Not under Trump.
All right. How about for President Bernie Sanders? Would you?
I would, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. I would take on that role because not because I believe myself to be good enough to actually handle the role, but because I know who you bring in as your advisors. I know who handles that the best. There are people out there who are the right people for this job. And currently Trump's team has no clue what they're doing.
Zero clue.
But you certainly would, Gregg. This is your resume right now.
Right now, this is me signing up for the job.
Yeah.
Well, Bernie, if you run again, I'm here.
Outstanding. Feds, if you're listening.
Yeah. So, God, just the news, man. So North Korea threatened to cancel the meeting between them and Trump.
Because of fucking course they did. Anyone that didn't see that coming is at least as dumb as Donald Trump.
Well, they're testing the waters, I think, with everything that they're saying in the last week. Now that they've got the meeting set up, now that they've got the war, peace on the Korean Peninsula, war is now over, whatever that means. And
is that official now?
It is. The agreement was signed. And so here we are with them now sitting there in this kind of weird spot where everyone's negotiating, everyone's talking. Now they're pushing back a little to see how far they can push back before, this newfound kind of conversation goes back in the other direction. And every pushback they just did in the last week, Trump backed down just a little bitch.
Right?
Every single thing they said, he just was like, yes, sir, no, sir, whatever you need, sir.
The worst part is he tried to...
the military... is he canceling the military exercises?
No, basically what he said was that whatever they need to do this nuclear deal that we need them to do with us, we'll give them the protections, the whatever, he's gonna... And then he said that Kim Jong Un was going to like it very, 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 very much. It was like 4 varies or 3 varies. But it was like
that.
Wasn't this the guy who just months ago was calling him Little Rocket Man?
Yes.
How soon we forget.
Yeah.
How soon he forgets.
Yes, he forgets.
Fire and fury and all that stuff.
Which the North Koreans are reading currently.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Who else is reading it?
Pretty much everyone.
And Trump indicated that, no matter what after this, that he would, the deal would allow Kim to continue, quote, running his country and, quote, become very rich. For the country to become very rich.
Yeah.
And it's mind blowing to me how far Trump gave so quickly there. I understand getting rid of nukes in that country, but
the saddest part is that he's still blustery about it. If they walk out of the meeting, well, they're gonna regret it. But then he's like, but we'll totally give them whatever you want, sir, as long as you do the denuclearization thing. But the saddest part is how predictable every fucking part of this has been. I mean, this isn't even really all that. The only thing that's different from how North Korea has been running this exact same play for the last 20 years is they actually signed a peace agreement with the South. If any, it had any sort of agreement there. Usually what they do is they do the big nuclear build up. They do all the bluster. Then they get an agreement that will give them, some aid money. They try and get as much as they can. And they agree to disarm a bit. And then they stop their testing for a while and get some aid money. And then they get dissatisfied, or the U.S. backs down on the deal and decides it doesn't like it anymore. Something happens where the deal falls apart, and rinse, repeat.
We're just watching the playbook play out. Although this time Un is definitely making a little more moves than his predecessors. Kim Jong Un there, he's crossed the border. He stepped across the line. He's traveling out of the country. Supposedly. I mean, if Singapore happens, which I think will. It is a little different, but the playbook itself looks pretty familiar.
Yeah, no, he's using the same basic plays. He's just rewriting them to fit the situation a bit.
On the trade war front, Japan has threatened tariffs on us now.
Yeah, because they were the only major U.S. ally not to receive exemptions on the Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum.
Yeah, so they're threatening $409 million in tariffs against the U.S. Due to that.
Which up till now they've of course been doing the thing that our allies usually do, where they go behind the scenes and are like, "Come on.
Seriously, guys.
Really? guys, please. And so the fact that now they're like, well, you know what? I guess retaliation is the next step here.
Yeah.
And they're publicly saying that.
Oh,
That's a
shit.
definite shift in tone.
Yeah, so they're going to the WTO next week or this week to officially notify them of these 409 million in tariffs against the U.S. So
They're going to place an embargo on all of the anime that they export.
No. They're not going to embargo any of their exports. They're going to do tariffs on imports from the U.S. to match dollar for dollar the tariffs the U.S. is laying on imports from Japan.
You're
yeah,
probably
they're
right.
just evening it.
That is
probably right,
literally
but
why it
Silverbolt
is
boring.
that specific
Yeah,
number of
409.
$409 million. That is because they targeted that to match the
Yeah.
expected amount.
Yeah, so it just evens out again, so it's pointless.
It is specifically a middle finger.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, a recent bipartisan bank deregulation law is killing community banks when its actually purported reason to exist was to save these community banks and banks like them from the growing Wall Street power of the large Wall Street banks. And, Wells Fargo at this point, after this bill has passed, says we absolutely expect bank consolidation to accelerate. And what's happening now is that all of these smaller banks, thanks to good old Mike Crapo of Idaho, his real name, Mike Crapo, and his wonderful Crapo bill, which is what this is so fondly
Boy,
being
is
called.
it ever.
The bigger
Oh,
banks
my gosh.
now can consolidate. Well, the medium-sized banks now can consolidate into bigger banks by buying up all the smaller community banks because they aren't getting taxed on the growth of their bank like they used to be. And so what this is going to do is it's going to destroy all the local community banks. And, this wasn't needed.
And harm community investors as well.
Absolutely harm community investment. This is another sideways way to give Wall Street more power because it's going to consolidate all the mid-sized banks into larger banks, making them just as powerful. They'll probably merge with the big Wall Street banks. And then, we end up with 6 banks and Wells Fargo, decides to create another few million fake accounts.
Sounds about right.
Mm-hmm.
And, just want to throw out there, fuck the relatively few, but enough Democrats that signed on to this shit fest.
To make it happen.
Yeah. And fuck all of them that wanted to pretend like a Republican-sponsored bill was going to be helping community banks because
They all get primaried.
there's no way they were possibly dumb enough to genuinely believe that.
I hope they all get primaried.
They won't.
They won't because they'll have the money from all these wonderful banks that are donating to their campaigns.
Oh,
Of
it's okay.
course.
The DCCC and the DSCC will both support them against any competitors and, release opposition research against those competitors. And if somehow those competitors manage to actually primary them, you can be assured that the DCCC or DSCC, as appropriate, will pull all of their support for that race and declare it that it's a losing race because they can't possibly win because they nominated a non-viable candidate.
That is what the DCCC does. It is absolutely the death of the Democratic Party in my eyes. What they are doing right now, wow. Really, guys. The people on the ground don't agree with what you are doing. You are losing support. You need to stop. So there's all kinds of fun primary results in the last couple weeks. Most notably to me is the two socialist candidates in Pennsylvania that won, beating longtime Democratic incumbents in the Pittsburgh area, putting them on track for victory in the general election, as neither faced Republican challengers.
Yeah, and there was a third that was DSA backed. That's Democratic Socialists of America, of course. Elizabeth Feidler, who is over in the Philadelphia area and also
Has no Republican opponent.
Republican opponent. So 3 DSA or DSA backed candidates in Pennsylvania all won primaries in at least 2 of the cases
Against Democratic incumbents.
and I mean, are going to win. just
And
outright.
The problem here is that the Democratic Party on a national level still aren't playing local enough to even probably notice this enough to care.
No.
But they should notice that this says a lot about where the base is.
Right?
And how different the base is from what they think it should be.
I mean,
somebody better be goddamn writing a very good narrative about where this is going here and how they aren't part of it, and how the party is fracturing between these centrist people who donate all the money and the people on the ground who want something a lot better than what is already here, which is more of the same. And unless they freaking do start making some big changes and embrace the progressive base, then they're going to see, the narrative turn against them. They'll be...
Right, but then we end up with a completely shattered left in going in 10 different directions, and the right still so strong that you can literally be running for a school counselor seat in a town with 5 people living in it, and the GOP will fund your race. And on the Democratic side, you can be running for mayor of a mid-sized city, and the DCCC won't know you exist.
Yeah, I admire the Republican Party for that reason, getting so freaking narrow in there.
They do local right for their party. And, the Democrats it's been about 30 years of the Democrats ignoring local and ignoring, what really made their party what it was. And now here's what we end up with. We end up with Trump as president and majorities in the House and the Senate for the Republicans.
Yep. And, control of, 30 state legislatures?
31, I think.
Where they have not only the full legislature, but the governor as well.
Yeah. That's what that level of local does.
So the moral of the story is support your local Our Revolution, brand new Congress offices.
Yeah, I mean, on a related note, interestingly, another thing in Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, big progressive guy, ran for the
guy with the tattoos.
Yeah, that one. He's currently the mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania. Actually,
very progressive, endorsed by Bernie.
Yep, and ended up winning against the incumbent lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania in the Democratic primary for lieutenant governor. Admittedly, that was because the current lieutenant governor, Mike Stack, had a lot of
issues.
Yeah, a lot of controversies. He actually did so badly that he placed 4th in a 5-person race.
Right. So, but here we are with John Fetterman beating out 4 other people, not just the incumbent.
Yes.
And so a very progressive mayor endorsed by Bernie Sanders has primaried the lieutenant governor, the incumbent, out of
who is not only a lieutenant governor, but he's actually part of like a political dynasty in Pennsylvania. The Stack family is long
known to
like his
hold
grandfather
lots of
was a
positions.
congressman too. So
Now let's get rid of that little nepotism there.
Yeah, and he was kind of a shitty Democrat. Also a horrible human being. He actually, the reason that he had all these controversies was because he was so shitty to the state employees. He and his wife were.
What was his wife doing there?
Being what's the term? It's not first lady at that point.
No.
It's the second lady.
I have no idea.
Anyway,
Did she have a real position?
She's the wife of the lieutenant governor. They live in the lieutenant governor's like housing. They have state employees working for them. This is a thing. Every governor mansion, the lieutenant governor is also like that. But they were so awful to all the employees working there that the governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Wolf, warned them to change their behavior, then stripped them of their police protection detail and scaled back staffing at their residence, and then had the inspector general of the state launch an inquiry into their treatment of state employees. So never mind politics. They are just bad people.
Yeah. So we're pretty happy that Fetterman is there kicking some ass.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So, yeah, but not limited to just Pennsylvania, although, a lot of primaries happen in states at the same time. So that's why there's a lot of Pennsylvania news right now.
And
but
there are only like
Nebraska,
5 states that had them. But
yeah, but Nebraska had some too. And
their actual
Garrett Eastman.
The 2nd congressional district, full on federal level representation. We had a first time candidate running primarily on Medicare for all, but also a bunch of other progressive issues, who won against Brad Ashford. Now, Brad Ashford is not only the former congressman for that district who lost just in 2016, he is a blue dog who is outright supported by the DCCC.
Weren't all those blue dogs like voted out in 2010?
Not all of them, just most of them.
Some of them survived, and he was trying.
Yeah, he was one of the few. But yeah, so as a result, she's going to be facing a Republican incumbent who was elected by barely 1% of the vote in 2016.
So she is really progressive and actually stands a chance of taking that seat.
Meanwhile, of course, national operatives were surprised by this, and they're not really sure how it will affect their plans, but it seems likely the district won't be as high up their priority list and might actually get removed entirely, because that's what the DCCC does when an actual progressive gets nominated rather than
they're like a child, you know, their toys being played with by someone else now, so they're just packing up and going home.
That's okay. As soon as that election is over, if she lost, they will insist that, see, this is what happens when you run a progressive in a red district, because clearly the problem is the fact
they were progressive, not that, you know, the DCCC didn't support them.
Yeah, the complete lack of any support from the Democratic Party is not the issue. It's that that wasn't a viable political platform.
My God, if they keep doing that, I really hope that at some point somebody comes up with the perfect rebuttal for all that nonsense.
I mean, there's plenty of good rebuttals. It just requires people to actually be paying attention. And they're not.
Keep this up, and, you know,
sooner or later, people will start to notice.
Yeah, especially if their message doesn't change.
Well, it hasn't
on
so
the GOP side of things are a little more fun over there too.
I mean, we should probably mention the one more Democratic side one.
Jordan?
Yeah. Running to become the first Native American governor in America. She is a 38-year-old two-term state lawmaker in Idaho who beat an establishment Democrat who got lots of support from the party.
It needs to keep happening.
And did so while running on Medicaid expansion, building a public medical school, protecting public lands, raising the minimum wage and teachers' pay, instituting universal preschool.
Now that's how you stand for something.
Right? And ran basically against the entire Democratic establishment. And no, it's Idaho. She isn't going to win, unfortunately. But, you know, it wasn't like
it's going to be
AJ Balikoff was going to win either.
It's going to be a very hard one for her to win.
It'll make it an interesting election. Anyway.
At the very least, having these candidates getting in these places that don't normally get that perspective, and being a local person giving that is invaluable to anyone that cares about any of these policies anyway, because that's how you build the support in those areas to get those candidates able to win in the first place.
Yeah, it takes many of them before they start to stick.
Okay, when is Massachusetts holding its primaries?
I am not sure on that one off the top of my head. I would have to double check dates.
But
I think the answer might be coming in very shortly.
Anyway, GOP side of things, we got a couple of interesting results as well. We had the
September 4th.
There we go. September
4th for Massachusetts' primaries.
And, you know, if you're not in Massachusetts and not in Idaho or Pennsylvania or Nebraska, as those being the other states we mentioned, check for the dates of your local primaries, because they probably haven't happened yet. But
check to see if you're eligible to vote as well.
Right. Make sure of that. Do that well in advance.
Save the date.
But yeah, so a couple interesting results on the Republican side of things. We had the co-founder of the House Freedom Caucus, Raul Labrador, lose a gubernatorial contest in Idaho to the Lieutenant Governor, Brad Little. So goodbye, House Freedom Caucus co-founder. Fuck you. Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. And then the other fun one, I would say, is this one's fun for two reasons, I think. First, because it involves Rick Saccone, the guy that lost to Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania back in March.
Oh yeah, that guy, the one who looks like that fucking football guy.
Yeah. So he ran for another district, And this district was,
It was carpetbagging.
well, they're changing all the maps in Pennsylvania because of the court ruling.
Oh, right.
So now he's running was running in a GOP primary in an even more Republican-leaning district, and then promptly lost to state legislature Guy Rensselaer, who, that's the other funny part of this, because the guy that actually won here, back in May, CNN found out that he previously co-hosted a radio program with Carl Higbee, who was one of the many people to resign from the Trump administration, this time over the fact that he'd made on his radio program anti-gay, anti-Muslim, racist, and sexist remarks. Well, turns out that Reschenthaler also wrote the foreword to Higbee's self-published 2012 book, where Higbee made anti-gay, racially charged, anti-immigrant, and birther comments, and then tried to excuse this in April by saying that he was unaware of the contents of the book before writing the foreword. But then when CNN did their reporting, they found out, turns out that book was constantly being discussed on the radio show that he co-hosted, and he specifically said that he read parts of the book and cited them approvingly.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
So I'm not sure which is funnier here.
Do
Rick
these people ever
Saccone
look
losing
ahead?
yet again in an even more Republican-leaning district, or the fact that the guy that he lost to is like an even bigger sack of assholes.
Oh. Heaven's sakes.
So what you're telling me is that there's someone in the GOP that's racist?
I mean, no. He resigned from the Trump administration. He doesn't count anymore.
Wow. I would never have guessed that one.
Look, I have it on authority that Donald Trump is the least racist person you will ever meet.
Nobody's less racist than I am.
So, that was a lot.
Was
We're
it
writing
ever?
down here. After 4 days, the fact that just out of this administration alone, that much news is coming out.
And there were another
literally is just mind-boggling.
half-dozen
We
stories.
Ignored so many stories in this episode.
Seriously. And then
I'm
not
almost
even
getting burnt out on the amount of news that's coming out just because of the amount of stupidity in this administration.
Just
I mean,
another ordinary day.
I guess the relatively nice part of it all is that we've gotten far enough into things that the different threads are starting to come together. We're now seeing the same names appearing in multiple different threads. So, sooner or later, it's all just one story.
We'll get there. We will get there. There will be a single version of this. It'll be written into one book with a timeline that makes sense at some point in the near future.
And Oliver Stone will direct the movie.
As per usual.
We can only assume.
All right, everyone. That is episode 57. Thanks for listening.
Have a good night. Thank you for listening. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GreggHoush Show and on Instagram at GreggHoush. If you like what you've heard and want to be a part of it, check out patreon.com/GreggHoush Show. In exchange for funding our programming, you gain access to exclusive content such as uncut editions of our podcast. We have new episodes every Thursday night. We hope you listen in. The GreggHoush Show was created by GreggHoush, executive produced by co-host Eric Gaures, and co-hosted by Kayla Avery. Other contributors include producer and writer Anna Jeffrey, co-host producer David McGuffin, and writer-engineer Robert Tortora. Theme music for this show was produced and recorded by Geneva de Colbert. Our interns include co-host Casey McLaughlin, writer-engineer Alec Greeny, writer Maddie Locicero, and associate producer, writer, and announcer William Kennedy. You're listening to New Revolutionary Radio, your call to action.